Hey, everybody! It's Monday at 7 o'clock on a. So you know what that means? It is time for SCV chat. For everybody who's coming in, good evening. Go ahead and get that out of the way. As usual, it's time for our normal disclaimer. The views and opinions expressed on this program are not necessarily the views and opinions of the National Sons of Confederate Veterans, any division, brigade, camp, or other subsidiary. Strictly the opinions of those who are expressing them. Good evening, guys. How are y'all?
Doing good, doing good. Gotta
Doing good.
gotta keep my new puppy, so I'm happy.
All right, all right,
Just
all
hanging
right.
out.
Well, that's good. That's good. Well, just to recap a couple of things. Monday or not Monday, excuse me. It is Monday. Saturday, we went up to Indianola, Mississippi, right in the heart of the Mississippi Delta, the Great Flatlands, and we went live with the Lee Jackson banquet with a tearjerker of a talk by J-Bo about Sam Davis. You can go back and rewatch that video lower on our stream. Watch it later. Definitely, if you missed our episode on Sam Davis, definitely do that. Um, Everything else though was really fun. We had a long chat. The CIC, um, myself, and the producer out on the CIC's back porch. And the producer and I didn't get back to his house until about 4 a.m. So it was good. Hey, past CIC Paul Grambling. Damn it. Um, that's a little inside joke from last night. But it was great. Definitely go ahead and rewatch it. If you haven't witnessed it, if you didn't watch it already. Um, Other recap of some other stuff that we've gone over last week, that we want to continue to remind everybody. First and foremost, we've got a lot of events coming up within the Confederation. Um, we have on March 7th, Confederate Flag Day, but correct me if I'm wrong, we're going to be observing it on March 6th. Because the 7th is Sunday and the 6th is the Saturday before. If you are not familiar with it, the First National and Third National were both adopted on March 7th, respectively, in 1861 and 1865. So it's our holiday to fly and support our colors. In the past, people have done everything from the camp level all the way up to the division level. It's our chance to show our colors. You can do anything from simply fly the flag outside your house, or if you want to organize a rolling rally or organize some type of event out at your in your locality, definitely do that. On March 27th, reminder, the Army of Tennessee is having their workshop at Gunnersville, Alabama. If you register now, um, between March 10th, you will be in your registration covers your lunch. After March 10th, lunch cannot be guaranteed. Just like we did with the banquet this past weekend, we will be live streaming portions of the workshop up there. So if you want to get the whole feel of it, register and come on. It'll be a great time, had by all. A bunch of good learning and stuff like that. If you can't make it, we can, like I said, you can see part of it, but some of it, at least two sections, are not going to be broadcasted live. Finally, May 1st, we have the National Pilgrimage to Elm Spring and our first National Confederate Memorial Service. I know there's a lot in the plans for it. It's going to be a great day in Dixie. There's going to be a time for floral arrangements, speakers, everything. Just a great day to be Southern and a great place to be Southern and a great place to see Adam Southern. So it'll really be good for us all to attend that and everything. So we've got that. Remember those dates, and let's strike. I know 2020, at least for me, was a rough year. I know it was a rough year for me in events. I know it was rough for everybody else, but let's reclaim some normalcy in our lives, guys. So Speaking of some upcoming events, tomorrow is Groundhog Day. And if you're familiar with that Yankee holiday where they bring out some Yankee gopher or groundhog and he tells what type of weather we're going to have for the next little while, I used to celebrate Groundhog, even Groundhog Day, but Possum Day until the state of Alabama said that they couldn't use Sand Mountain Sam, which was a weather predicting possum. But I never listened to the groundhog up in Pennsylvania. But Matt informed me of another rodent, southern rodent, um, in Georgia. Matt, what's that rodent's name?
That's General Beauregard Lee, and he's 60% more accurate than that Yankee carpetbagger from Pennsylvania.
I do think it's very appropriate that the groundhog was named after General Beauregard and General Lee.
Right?
Just my opinion. So I'll definitely be watching to see what General Beauregard Lee says about the upcoming weather. Some other things that we wanted to remind us of. Go ahead.
We'll post it on the chat page.
Well, I was gonna say, yeah. We'll share his prediction on the chat page. So tune in tomorrow for your groundhog weather. Another thing that we've been mentioning, and it has been in the works for many, many years, it feels like, is the reinterment of General Nathan Bedford Forrest and his wife Mary Ann. Just a reminder to everybody who's been following this. There's not a set timetable. We can't announce any type of timetable thing because we have to wait on the weather. But then once that happens, things will start rolling quickly. The big thing that the commander-in-chief and then everybody's asked us to do right now is to help raise funds for the reinterment and that sort of thing. SCV chat, we're running a fundraiser through Teespring where if you buy anything that's labeled as NBF fundraiser, 100% of the proceeds that we make are going to that. We have a goal to present $500 to the GEC for the next spring GE or for the spring GEC meeting, and we're looking forward to that. We're halfway to our goal, so everything with that, there's our Teespring link. If though you are not wanting to, do Teespring, if you don't want the T-shirt, or if you want to do something in addition to the T-shirt, like several have done, call headquarters 1-800-MY-SOUTH, and they will be able to take the donation via credit card or debit card over the phone. That's 1-800-MY-SOUTH, MYSOUTH. Spell it out. Or if you want to mail in a check, go and look at the information that was sent out for the Telegraph that has that information. In this case scenario, it should be at the bottom. You just scroll down to our page a couple weeks ago and video, or just private message us and we'll be happy to send it over to you. But we are doing that. In our pre-show interview, the executive director said that we're still getting those rolling in. The only way that we can make this happen is with us, and it's what we owe. And as a descendant of a man who rode with Forrest, or multiple men really who rode with Forrest, it's by helping that I'm honoring them as well. So we've got that going on. But if you have ordered one, I do want to go ahead and point this out. On average, take around 10 days to deliver. My shirt, for example, is one of the first ones printed, should be in later on this week, and the first print should be in as well. So just go ahead and, like I said, get those orders in or call headquarters. And as the T-shirt says, let's bring him home, his final resting place. Any of y'all want to add something? Take that as a no. All right, we're all good with that one. Something else, because we're waiting on a guest to come in. We were going to save this for the end of the show, but we'll go ahead and bring it up now. Is remember that we have the Friends of Elm Springs and the Friends of the Museum going on, and brick sales and everything like that. I know for a fact that, because they're rolling on the bottom of the page, that the Friends of Elm Spring and the Friends of the National Confederate Museum at Elm Spring applications are online. I believe the brick applications are on the SCV website as well. They're for sure. You scroll down to the chat page on Facebook, you can find those. But we definitely need to make, Elm Springs the tourist destination and the ultimate destination for everything Confederate. And we can only do that with help through these fundraising efforts. So yeah, and in fact, everything that we mentioned last week, and that we did the subsequent episode with reminders. Remember, those links for all of that information is on the chat page on our Facebook page. Just go scroll down our timeline, and you'll be able to click those actively. Let me see what we got comments wise. My computer's running a little bit slow. Hey, Mama Ann. Do they have them in the gift shop? I'm guessing you're talking about the applications.
We do.
If you are talking about the applications, I'm sure they have. Yeah, so they're at the end shop they're there. If you're talking about anything that we're doing, at least on the Teespring, no, it's available in the gift shop. Speak of the gift shop, bunch of new stuff just rolled out. I know Adam shared a picture of some of the new items that the team up at Elm Springs has been working on, and one of them includes a really kick butt grilling set that I got a birthday in roughly a month, guys. I'm just saying. But there's that. There's a lot of great new things available at the SCV gift shop. Just go to scv.org and you'll see the link to the store in there. And Adam just shared in there the walkways of remembrance, and I'll pull that up really quickly in case anybody wants to write it on there. So there's that. For those really quickly who have just as a little bit of tracking back to Teespring a little bit. If you have ordered one Nathan Bedford Forrest shirts via Teespring, when you get it in, take a picture of it and private message us if you want to, through just message SCV chat page, and you may see yourself on the chat. So bring those, do that, and we can get that in there. Another thing I wanted to mention, but we'll talk about it more next week, is at Beauvoir, the last home of Jefferson Davis. There is the, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, it is the official tomb of the unknown Confederate soldier down there. I believe that a past GEC years ago voted to make him the official, and the International Order of Oddfellows have given him, as a representative of all the unknown Confederate soldiers, the Order of Chivalry, and it's like the highest order that they can bestow on somebody. And every year they have a pilgrimage down there to Beauvoir. And this year J-Bo will be there. I'll be there. And it's a wonderful event. We'll have a member of Beauvoir staff on next week. That's the plan right now, is to have her on to discuss the event and rundown of it before we get into our topic. But if you've never been to Beauvoir and you don't have anything going on, it's on the Gulf Coast, Mississippi Gulf Coast. This is a great organization that is reaching out and honoring one of our own. It's their pilgrimage, but it would be nice if we had a lot of SCV representative from not only the state of Mississippi, but anybody else who's available to make it. It's always great. So
I'm
sorry,
really
I had a private message come up.
I'm really looking forward to coming down for that. I didn't get to make it last year, and I've been really looking forward to it. Haven't been to Beauvoir a number of times. I find the place humbling because, and there's Chief snoring again. There you go, buddy. Hey, Chief is my hero. Let him snore. Uh, the Having gone down a few times, and I was just down there recently when we had the fall muster, and going into the home and then traveling the grounds is it's well worth it, and it's going to be an honor to be down there.
Yeah, I've gone the past couple of years, and you know, a lot of the guys who are members of the International Order of the Odd Fellows, they come from, you know, all over the world. They're folks from Canada, and of course, almost every state in the continental United States. You know, because it's a, you know, big, um, it's a big it's a big deal for them. And it is it's very nice to see, especially the ones representing the federal states, the Yankee states, bringing you know, laying floral tribute at our, you know, the official unknown Confederate soldier. So definitely do that. I tell you what, we have we have two trivia questions lined up for tonight. The executive director has one he thinks he can stump me with, and then we'll have our normal one. So, Adam, what's your question?
Let's see here. I just grabbed a book off the library shelf. You may not know it, but the National Confederate Museum also has the research library, the William D. McCain Research Library. So grab a book off the shelf real quick. It says, what noted Confederate leader refused to write a letter that would be in transit on Sunday? This should be an easy one.
Yeah, that is an easy one. That's not going to stump me. That's General Jackson.
Second one.
Come on. You're going to have to do better if you're going to try to trivia.
Hey, this was just spur of the
right.
moment. I know you've read this book 5 or 6 times, so you probably know them all anyway.
He's a cheater. He's the Tom Brady of Civil War trivia.
I've got no. I believe I've got that one. It's my least favorite one to use. This one, Adam. Yeah, I've got that one and another one. That we use. But actually, this week's trivia question doesn't even come from either one of those books. The official trivia question. We'll give everybody a second to get ready for it, and I'll get ready with the get ready with the timer. Yeah. So the question's up. Who was Jim Limber?
We sell a book about him in our gift shop.
That'd be on the Fort Shack.
Well, while everybody's waiting, I can answer.
Well, we still got.
What'd you want, Connor? Okay. I was going to answer Vincent's question. He's traveling to Elm Springs. Where are great places to stay for a few days? From Elm Springs to Shiloh, you're probably looking at 110 miles. You could stay down there in that area. That'd give you go into Corinth. You can go to Parker's Crossroad when you're going on your way over there. Then, of course, there's everything having to do with the actual Shiloh battlefield itself, going all the way down to Holly Springs, which was used as a hospital and a convalescent place. So you've got everything up through there. Then you could, I'd probably settle somewhere around Murfreesboro, because if you do Smyrna, because if you stay in Smyrna, you've got the Sam Davis home. Then if you go up into Nashville, you've got a few things up there. You got the Battle of Nashville. Then you've got Franklin, where you have Winstead Hill, and then you've got the Battle of Murfreesboro. If you stay in Smyrna, that's all kind of pretty close, or you could stay right there on I-65. I hope that kind of takes a stab at answering some of your questions.
Yeah, when the producer and I went up for the Battle of Franklin episode that we did, we stayed at a hotel just north of Columbia, kind of in between Columbia and Spring Hill. So we were able to, it was kind of halfway between the two. And when we went up to Franklin, it was like maybe a 20-minute drive from the hotel.
Didn't you stayed on Bear Creek, didn't you?
Sure.
Oh, did you stay
All
out
right,
on the
so
interstate?
the answer is we stayed by the Harley Davidson shop.
Okay, that is exit 46 off I-65. You can stay right there. There's a Cracker Barrel, of stands, and 3 or 4.
You were between Columbia and Chapel Hill.
Yeah, you can stay there, and that's probably
Okay,
cheaper.
well,
Go ahead.
I was just going
Chapel Hill?
go with the a little fun thing. I actually pulled into the wrong hotel, and I walked in there with overconfidence. And when the woman couldn't find our reservation, and I pulled it up, she said, "Honey, that's the hotel across the street." Very, very humbling. But yeah, the answer is Jim Limber, or James Henry Brooks, was a freed orphan boy of mixed white and black descent who was adopted, quote unquote, and lived with the family of Confederate President Jefferson Davis. In the research that I found, there's no documentation that survived that says he was officially adopted. But the quick story is Verena Howell Davis was returning to the White House, and she saw him being abused, and took him away from that situation, and gave him clothes, fed him, let him live at the White House. Jefferson Davis did file the paperwork that declared Jim as a free boy. And he goes on and lives with the family from roughly February of 1864 to the capture. And Verena wrote about him fighting the Yankees like a little tiger when the Yankees captured the first family on the escape out of Richmond. But if Jeff Davis was this evil bad man, why would he do that? But anyway, so tonight is it's February 1st, which is the beginning of Black History Month. And Black History Month is one of the things that's often overlooked in it is Confederate Black history, and that's kind of our theme for the evening. Honoring the men who fought for the South and still are honoring their Confederate ancestors this month. Well, actually, all 12 months of the year. If you looked at your Confederate veteran this issue, there was an excellent article written about it. Go read your veteran, and you can get some more information, of course, than what we're presenting. But one picture that was very that I found while doing research years ago was one that was in the veteran. It was published in a January of 1863 issue of Harper's Weekly, which was the CNN or the MSNBC of that time, very liberal newspaper. But I can't remember the exact wording of the caption, but it was black rebel pickets as seen through a looking glass or something like that. And one of the big arguments that people give towards the Black Confederate is that they didn't serve in arms. They served in, if they were real, they served in another capacity. And for any reenactor, anybody who stood pickets, to me, this picture completely disproves it. Here are two men, well clothed, armed, clearly with rifles, bayonets, cartridge boxes, everything, sent miles ahead of the Confederate lines and visible through a looking glass on a picket post. Something else that I found while just beginning research was a quote from Frederick Douglass. Frederick Douglass, the mainmost abolitionist, leading up to the war and during the war. Um, he wrote in 1861, after the Battle of First Manassas, he wrote, "It is now pretty well established that there are at the present moment many colored men in the Confederate Army doing duty not only as cooks and servants and laborers, but as real soldiers." And if we, as historians, which I like to take that title, you don't have to have 15 letters behind your name to be a historian. It's somebody who studies the war. When we look at and look for first-person accounts from the war, and here is this main leader, opposite of what the Confederate soldier, completely opposite of the Confederate soldier. He later goes on in his quote saying that that the rebels, that they're fighting to help the rebels destroy the federal government. That's his words. He's throwing that out there. Then clearly there must be some type of evidentiary fact behind it. There are accounts upon accounts of soldiers out there, but we honor them. We honor the men who went and fought and everything. Who served, like the famous picture of the Chandler's brothers from Mississippi, or our very own Nelson. If you've never met Nelson at one of our national reunions, you've missed out. This is actually a picture of Nelson here on, he's on my right, he's the young man. And that's his grandfather. And his grandfather rode in Nathan Bedford Forrest's, his escort company, and was a chaplain. And they're at a Confederate Academy as well. Very proud of his service. Nelson is an asset for the SCV. Speaking of assets for the SCV that we have with us, if you should have seen his video on MakeDixieGreatAgain.com. We've linked it in all of our stuff that we use to promote this week's episode. We've got our very own, I'm trying to add him to the stream right now, Sammy Travis. Give me a second, Sammy. You should be popping up. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Okay, good deal. How's it going tonight?
It is going
you're
good.
Coming in loud.
Going good.
Well, for good deal. Well, for us that are, or for the viewers that are not familiar with you, why don't you give us a little bit of information about yourself? Why you joined the SCV, all that stuff.
Well, I joined the SCV about 3 years ago. It took about a year for my to find my ancestry, and I pretty much didn't know the SCV existed until awards day in my high school, because I was in the JROTC there, and I got the Lee Foley Award. And at the time I was like, "There's no way I'm going to one of these camp meetings." All of the misconceptions that plagues the Black community nowadays. All the misconceptions. And I wind up, a year later, meeting my camp commander, and he offered to do my genealogy, and at least I would know where I come from, and the rest is history. We found my ancestor, and ever since then I haven't been full going, never looking back.
Well, that is completely awesome. I follow you on, of course, we're friends on Facebook, and I follow you on TikTok as well. And one of the TikTok videos you put out a couple weeks ago, you mentioned the SCV in it, which I was, really, hey, we're getting some traction on TikTok a little bit. But also you mentioned your involvement with preserving a monument on campus where you go to
Yes.
school.
So I go to Texas A&M, and we have a monument of Confederate General Sullivan Ross, And it's all about how well he's contributed to both Texas A&M and just Texas A&M system. I mean, he founded Prairie View in a time where blacks getting education was almost unheard of, and now we see Prairie View A&M as one of the top HBCUs. But of course, people don't understand, and as soon as they see Confederate, they automatically assume that it's bad. So that was a huge fight, and I'm glad to announce earlier around Wednesday of last week, it became official that the monument will be staying on the campus. So that is great.
Well, that is completely awesome. So what did you find out about your ancestor? And while you're talking, I'm not leaving. I've got to do a quick refresh of my browser. So you know exactly about your ancestor.
So my ancestor, he was quite a character in as far as his role in the South. He obviously, there's a huge misconception. I tell people, I have a Confederate ancestor, and they automatically assume that he was black, but it's quite uncommon. But he was a white planter in Fort Adams, Mississippi, and it just so happened that his daughter fell in love with a slave, and the rest is history. And I like to tell the story because a lot of people, the first thing they jump to is, oh, he probably didn't accept her. We have proof that she was well taken care of, and even and this woman would have been my great grandmother. And I remember talking to my father and my grandmother, and she was talking about her grandmother, which is my fourth great grandmother, and just talked about how well educated she was in a time where that would have been uncommon during Reconstruction, and how well educated, well spoken she was. So my ancestor was German, and a fun fact, I like to tell people this all the time. He had $20 million of Confederate money on his plantation, and he was tasked with sending it up to General Kirby Smith during the Red River campaign. So I don't think I have on my computer at the time where you can find it. But if you look up Benjamin Rowe, Wilkinson County, Mississippi, you will find a nice biography and memoir that you can read about him at least.
Well, that is really awesome, really awesome.
Yeah.
So and I remember after the first of the year, you put out on Facebook one of your life ambitions, and I'm really I want to help you in any way you can with this ambition, but it's to one day be a CIC of the organization, right?
One day, hopefully, and I was talking to a bunch of our older members, and it hurts to see that my generation, especially, they're just not joining. So we have to find new ways, which is why that TikTok kind of helped, put the SCV out there a little. I got 50,000 views on it, but it's just, we have to preserve our history, because what happens when y'all are gone or when I'm gone? We already know that the media is on our side. We know that we don't have anyone that's willing to truly protect our history. I mean, I learned that I never really understood how hard of a fight it was to maintain our history until after fighting for that statue to stay. I never realized it. I mean, I got death threats, I got all kinds of different things. But if we don't do it, then who will?
You're right. We got to make a stand.
Yeah, and that's one. Well, as a younger person, of course now, and I feel like I should be Larry's age. Um,
Oh,
but
wow.
one thing that we promote on the show all the time, we promote on the show all the time is reclaiming the narrative 1 week at a time. What are some of the other ideas you have about reclaiming the narrative, about well, everything Confederate? Some other ideas you've got?
We were talking, and I used to work for the Chamber of Commerce in our local city, and from there we were getting my camp onto the chamber, because obviously we know that that at the SCV is a nonprofit, so you can join the Chamber of Commerce, and it doesn't. Here's the thing: if you have the money in your camp to do it, it will help you at least get in touch with a lot of your state senators, because there's state senators out there that are willing to work, willing to do something. But if you go and you're calling and you're going off on them, it's just not going to work. So sometimes, I know a lot of us are rough and rugged, but sometimes we have to act a little like a politician ourselves. You know, it has to start at the local government, and I'm telling you, if you start at the local government, you get your name out, especially with your Chamber of Commerce. There's a start. You can at least get your foot in the door, because there's one thing that they want, and that's money. So as long as you give them money, they'll do anything you want.
That's true. That is true. I
Yes.
believe I preached on that last week.
So,
didn't you, boys?
Majority,
I see there's a question about my TikTok handle. It's the real Sammy Travis.
Sammy, Commander-in-Chief McClooney here. How you doing,
are
partner?
there fake Sammy Travises out there?
How are you?
I don't think he heard you, Connor. Sammy said, Connor asked, was there any fake Sammys out there?
I hope not. At least not yet.
Well, look, Sammy, this is the Commander-in-Chief. How you doing, partner?
I'm doing good. How about yourself?
I'm doing fine. Look, I really appreciated when I was Lieutenant Commander-in-Chief that you came in on the series of videos that we did on the many faces of the SCV. I appreciate you volunteering for that for me. Ever since that video, and it's not just yours, but yours did contribute to it, we're approaching somewhere close to 200,000 views on all those videos. And, it really attributes to the diversity of this organization when we got a chance to show not only people of color, we got to show Latinos, we got to show Jewish members, people from all walks of life, young people and so forth like that. And that's the myth about this organization, that people just do not believe that there are people of color. And I'm not just referring to of black race. I'm referring to Latinos and so forth like that in this organization. And they all think we're all a bunch of old men as well. But, this is the push. This is one of the things that Jason and I talked about, that we wanted to push to get people into this organization of younger age. And if the last report I got since we started doing this SCV chat, Connor, what's the percentage that's 35 and below that's watching this show now?
The percentage of people below our average age is 41%.
So that's a huge thing. And I think the last time I talked to you was approaching over 19,000 viewers on this show now. So this is getting to be the SNL of
within the last month alone, 19,000.
Because this show can get a little crazy sometimes. So. But welcome aboard, Sammy, and we appreciate you.
Oh, I'm glad to be here.
All right, I did my SNL bit now. Who's next?
If you don't mind, Sammy, I'd like to ask you.
Well, as long as you're
ask you
not being a
question.
wild and crazy guy.
Okay.
Now you mentioned the gentleman earlier, Benjamin Rowe. Can
Yes.
you fill in a little bit about that? And did you say he wrote a diary or had an
There's
account
a,
of the war?
so there's a memoir. It's called Memoirs of Mississippi.
Memoirs of Mississippi.
Of
Okay.
Mississippi. And you can look up Benjamin Rowe. And I really, if you just put into Google in quotation marks, Benjamin Rowe in quotation marks, and then Wilson County, Mississippi, you will find everything you need to know. Or even Fort Adams, Mississippi. That'll probably be your best bet.
Fort Adams. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for that. I'm always interested in firsthand accounts.
Mhm.
I love those. And I had not heard of this one until you mentioned it. And thank you for bringing it up.
Yes, it's I was shocked. I tell you, I like to tell this story. When I got the call that I was officially a member of the SCV, it was around 10 o'clock at night. And my parents had already knew. My parents are very supportive. One, they're very supportive. And I get a call, and my dad is a darker fellow. My mom is light skinned, and mom and my dad, they get in an argument about which side of the family my Confederate ancestor was on. So I had to call back and confirm it was on my dad's side.
Do you have any brothers, Sammy?
I don't. I'm the only one.
Only one. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, and
Cousins?
your video that you when Commander McClooney was Lieutenant Commander in Chief, the job you did in that and the words you spoke in that, they were wonderful, and I thank you for doing that.
I thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I tell you, Sammy, what gets me in that video every time is the end. When you approach the monument and it's just the shadow, it's something about that shadow when you take your hat off that just stirs a lot of emotion in people whenever they see it. And just hearing your footsteps as you walk up to the monument, your shadow appears, and then you take the hat off. I mean, I don't think Jamie Matthews could have done it better with you on that. I don't know if that was planned. That was something you did at the spur of the moment, but it's something about the shadow standing there before the monument.
And it was one of those things where we were just walking. We were going to film at the time. We were going to show me just walking up, but he just automatically just caught on. And as soon as I saw it, I said, that has to be the ending. It was just, honestly, we look at today, and we have to. And I always say this, there's so many misconceptions, and it's not gonna be taught in the school. People can see that on Facebook. I know there's blacks out there that aren't glad that I am proud to be in the SCV. And I understand that. And in a way, I don't blame them because they weren't ever taught the right knowledge. It's hard to really get mad at ignorance, especially if it's non-willful ignorance. Now, if it's willful ignorance, then that's a different case.
Yeah.
But and we can, and I say, I would love, ideally in the future, to be able to have a situation where there's SCV guys that go out in the local community, sit down, set up a little stand, have someone come in and ask, what is this about? I'll tell you what, I have not yet, and I tell people this all the time, men in SCV are true Southern gentlemen. We don't ever really talk about race unless it's a situation where we're talking about Black Confederates or anything of that nature. But we're so diverse, but people just don't see it. And if they see it, they're angry at you for being a part of something that they don't understand. So it's just hard. You know, it's definitely a hard situation. But I think that there's a possibility for it to come around. I really do.
I think it would be nice at some point during this to show Sammy's video before we get off here. I know it popped up as a link in YouTube, but it that video says a whole lot. And thank you for your kind words, Sammy.
Yeah.
Thank you. I see that Dave Brantley has asked a question. He says, "What is the general response when you tell young folks and people of color that you are in the SCV?" It's typically a shock. And the first question is why. And then once you get to explaining it, they start understanding just slightly. And they typically do. As far as the I would say as far as the higher education, being at Texas A&M, you know, when they were having their protests, and thank God that Aggies, we are, no matter how mad we can get at each other, how much we oppose each other, we always find a way to communicate. And the young lady who was pushing the BLM protests against, you know, Sully's statue, we were able to find a lot of time in those times leading up to the protest to get, you know, everything laid out how we wanted the protest to go on both sides. You know, because we weren't there to stop them from protesting. I want to be, you know, clear about that. When we go out to defend a statue, don't try to stop them from protesting, because they're gonna make themselves look dumb. I hate to say that about the BLM group that was on the campus protesting against Sully, but a lot of the things that they did were so disrespectful, and people saw that. You know, I always say, you know, and we had a group that was going to come down fully armed out, and I told them, I said, look, you know, we're in a delicate situation. One, we had a liberal president, a very liberal president at the time. So, I mean, he probably didn't, I'm telling you, he would have been against keeping that statue, hands down. So we had to play our cards just right. We had to let the media show them being condescending to us, but us showing them all the love that we could. You know, when they would get in our face, spit at us, let it do it. It takes a certain composure. You know, Aggies, we're not always composed all the time. I tell you, we're easy to get hot, red hot, but took a certain composure. That certain composure paid off at the end. I hope I answered your question, Dave. That's all I really got.
I see quite a few people asking about your Facebook on here, Sammy.
I see.
Yeah,
Howdy, Mr. and Mrs. Grambling, former CIC. Good to see them all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, people are asking what are you on Facebook, or do you have your handle on Facebook, or you got a Facebook page?
You can go and add me on Facebook. You can find me on Facebook. It's Sammy Travis Jr.
Mm-hmm.
And you can follow me on Instagram. I got just about every platform, almost every platform. I even have Twitter. I'm kind of scared about Twitter.
Well, I had Twitter up until a few months ago, and I haven't had Twitter since then. I decided to get rid of it, so I understand.
Yeah, I'm surprised I haven't got kicked off Twitter yet. But a couple people were asking about Sammy's video. I was able to pull it up, everybody. So let me try to get on the screen real quick.
Uh-oh. Are we going to get a TikTok video?
No, you wish.
What's going on?
He didn't break it, Matt. He's here we go.
Yeah, I'm not hearing any audio on that.
Was anybody hearing that?
Oh,
All right, good.
No, looks like we're having some technical difficulties on it.
Let me try one more thing. I think it was
We used to have the
I wouldn't be earning my paycheck if I didn't know what was going on. I think I got it figured out. What I did is when you knock yourself out of the meeting, you automatically mute yourself. So I think that's what happened. Boss, just let me know on my iPhone because I can't see the private chat.
Yeah, I'll message you privately. Try this one more again.
There you go.
I got into the SCV after receiving an award back when I was in high school. I had no clue what the SCV was. All I knew was that it was a rebel flag and it was supposed to be racist. I decided I would go and look further into it. Everything that we're taught from a very young age is that the Confederacy was wrong. They were treasonous. It turns out it wasn't just because the South had slaves. This is because of a very fundamental principle of big government. There's nothing more American than keeping the government in line. It's what we were bred to do. It comes down from 1776, Declaration of Independence. It's because we decided to keep a government that we deemed tyrannical in line. That's what the true definition of the cause is. Me being a young Black American and being a part of the Sons of Confederate Veterans is a shock to a lot of people. The Black Confederate Soldier would have had to have been one of the hardest working soldiers there was. These are men who decided to take up a cause because in the end, it was their own cause. In fact, most owners wanted the slaves to stay back because that was how they were steadily making income. They made a choice to do something that was bigger than themselves. That's why, as a Black Confederate now, it is my duty that I owe them to do something greater than myself. Confederate history is American history, and you cannot separate the two. I am Sammy Travis, descendant of Private Benjamin Rowe, a Confederate veteran.
Well done.
15 seconds of fame.
Well done. Well done.
thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
I tell you, that last thing gets me every time.
Well, and I noticed that.
I believe Mr. Connor Bond
Well,
would still have an issue.
I noticed.
Okay, I guess
I
he
don't know
got
what happened to Connor. Sammy,
Yeah.
thanks for being with us tonight. Have always admired that video that you did for the SCV, and I enjoy following you on social media.
Thank you.
You have a lot of great posts, and your sentiments about the cause was keeping big government in check. Amen, brother. I like that.
Yes. anything, we need more of that right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what's your major in college?
I'm an animal science major here at A&L I'm in the production industry side and an emphasis in equine studies.
Okay.
Yes.
I see on social media you like to ride horses, so
I do.
see the cowboy hat. So
I spend here at A&M, I'm in the cadet corps, so it takes up a majority of my time. I will say that.
yes, sir. Yes, sir. We appreciate everything you do for the SCV. Looks like Connor is back. Connor, want to try it again?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. See, this is why everybody needs to go on Teespring and buy a shirt so we can fix these bugs. Anyway, well, one thing I was gonna bring up about the cowboy in you. Are you familiar with the story of Holt Collier?
I am. What a man.
All right. Well, I know. Indeed. You know, he's a model for the I remember the name of the monument, but I believe it's in San Antonio. Is the Cowboys Monument? He's the one who is based on that. Now, for those in the chat, well, really quickly, Harrison wants to know, what type of horse do you ride?
Pretty much any kind of horse. A lot of time with Tennessee walking horses, and a lot of time with quarter horses, and hopefully one day thoroughbred. One day, when I have money to buy a thoroughbred.
Jealous.
Anyway, I know in preparation for this week, I believe Andrew did a little bit of studying on Holt Collier. And Commander in Chief, can you tell us about him, especially for those who are new to the chat or are watching this video for the first time and have no idea who Holt Collier is and his story?
Sure. And I was very fortunate enough tonight. I just happened to come across a newspaper article. The Washington County News, which is Washington County, where Greenville, Mississippi is, where Holt Collier is buried at, did an interview on him. And I thought it was just appropriate, instead of me telling about Holt Collier, why don't we hear his own words in this newspaper article? The article was titled "Prominent Negroes," and Holt Collier stated he was born in Greenville in 1848. He died in Greenville on August the 1st, 1936. So that would make him about 90 years old. He was there through most of his life. He was a remarkable colored citizen of Washington County, Mississippi. He was an ex-slave and a Confederate soldier. And he goes on to say that he believed that he did a great deal to uplift his race. Of course, one of his biggest claim to fame was, as you can tell by the picture, that he was the scout, the leader on the Theodore Roosevelt teddy bear hunt that took place down in Onward, Mississippi, between Greenville and Vicksburg, Mississippi. And in this particular picture, he is actually wearing the hat that he wore during the war when he rode with the 9th Texas Cavalry. But I'm just going to read this article here. First, the interviewer described him. He said that Holt Collier was too feeble to rise unaided from his stout oak rocking chair. Holt Collier was an ex-slave and a Washington County most colorful citizen as he sat there on his in his rocking chair on his little home on North Broadway. Holt Collier goes on to say that that he loved wearing his hat. In fact, when this interview was going on, that he was wearing his wide brim hat, which was very similar to those that were worn by the officers in the Confederate Army. The interviewer goes on to say that he had that hat down that shades his failing eyes when he was sitting there on the little porch of his home, watching passerbyers go by, and he would wave at them. Like I said, he was born in 1848, and that as a child, Holt's master, Mr. Howell Hines, the son of General Hines, who had served in the War of 1812, they would travel back and forth from Greenville to Jefferson County, Mississippi, to New Orleans, to Louisville and Cincinnati, and Holt always accompanied him everywhere he went. He served in the capacity of a juvenile valet to his master. Traveling at the time was done mostly by boat, and Holt recalls quite a number of boats that they plied the river as they traveled up and down. At the age of 12, Holt was sent with his master's son to Bardstown, Kentucky, where both of the boys were expected to attend school. But Holt's love for hunting caused him to play hooky a lot while his master's son studied. He often hid his gun in the spring house and returned for it later and slipped away to the fields and forests to hunt instead of going to school. Though Mr. Hines never succeeded in having the boy educated in books, he, however, trained Holt to be always honorable, truthful, and trustworthy. And this training was evident throughout his entire life. Holt tells us that at the time when the war began, he was living on Plum Ridge, the Hines plantation, south of the present city of Greenville, Mississippi. Mr. Howard Hines, later Colonel Hines, had always spoken of Holt as spoken of by Holt as the old colonel, and his son Tom was making ready to join the Confederate forces in early 1862. When Holt Collier, then only 14 years of age, learned of his master's preparations for departing, he asked to go with them. To Holt's great disappointment, however, his master and Tom agreed that the little colored boy was too young to enter the army. Holt says, "I begged like a dog, but they stuck to it, and they said, 'You are too young,'" Holt said. So what did he do? He stowed away on the steamboat that his master and his master's son were traveling on. It says during that afternoon, as they were on the boat headed toward Memphis, Tennessee, the old colonel and Tom left and prepared to join the men already gathered on the riverbank in Memphis. Night came. The dense forest of cypress brakes between Plum Ridge and the little town of Greenville became very dark. Through this darkness, the young colored boy made his way toward the boat and its flotilla of steamboats, and he stowed away on it. He slipped aboard. The Vernon was the name of the ship, climbing up the back of the boat to the kitchen where he hid himself. When Holt was in hiding, a man entered the kitchen beckoning him to come near. Holt won the man's sympathy and aid in carrying out his plan to follow his master to the army. Arrangements were made for Holt to occupy a small room adjoining the kitchen and the cook. When Holt had seen on the Vicksburg, that was another ship, proved friendly. "He hid me during the trip and told me when to get off at Memphis," Holt tells his story. The soldiers from the boat having gone ashore, the cook thought that the time was right for Holt to make his appearance. Leaving the shelter of the cookhouse, he climbed up the high banks at the Memphis landing to find his master standing with a group of officers, among whom, now get this, y'all, among whom were, and this is Holt's words, General Bedford Forrest and General Breckinridge. No more was said of Holt's youth, and he went into training at Camp Boone in Tennessee. He served as a soldier. Now, this is his words. He served as a soldier and did not go as a body servant to Colonel Hines. After drilling for a time at Camp Boone, he was sent with his company into Kentucky. His first taste of war came in a fight at a bridge over Green River, and there he met his old colonel again. During the 4 years of conflict, he served with the Texas Cowboys, Ross's brigade, and was under Colonel Dudley Jones at the close of the struggle. After the surrender, he returned to Washington County with his master and Tom Hines. Now, I'm very surprised that this was not in the article, but if you look at the biography of Holt Collier, written by Minor Ferris Buchanan, here's the book right here. It's the only in-depth biography on Holt Collier. But Holt Collier was at the Battle of Shiloh, where he impressed everybody with his sharpshooting skills. Okay? He was there and he witnessed the death of General Albert Sidney Johnston as he stood there watching as General Johnston slipped away. After the war, he would go on to serve as a cowboy. He was a sheriff out Texas for a bit. But what he becomes famous for is, of course, the teddy bear hunt. Okay. He was set freed when he got off that boat and joined at Camp Boone. His master and his son asked him, well, Holt, you're here. What do you want to do? He says, I think I'll go off and fight with you boys. And since he chose that, they set him free to be his own man. And throughout the entire 4 years, he would serve honorably. After Shiloh, that's when he gets involved with the 9th Texas Cavalry. And they would serve. Now get this, y'all, that he served in Mississippi. His unit served there, in Tennessee, and in Alabama. But at the close of the war, he was with the Company I 9th Texas Cavalry patrolling around the Mississippi Delta area. And they were ruthless. They were a tough bunch of men. And a lot of the things that he learned from the 9th Texas Cavalry, he would take with him when he went across the river into Texas and become a sheriff and a cowboy. But there is one little story. I'll close with this. Holt tells that on one occasion during the Reconstruction days, this is his words, not mine. I'm reading from the article. Holt tells that on one occasion during the Reconstruction days, he, the only Negro among 500 white men, marched up Washington Avenue in Greenville, Mississippi, under fire as a protest against the insults to the white men and women of Greenville. Several times he was taken to court because of his participation in acts of this kind. Now, there's an old story that he was brought on trial because of a federal captain, supposedly, that had killed his old beloved master. And that was when Holt was across the river in Texas. When he found out about it, he came back. And mysteriously, that captain was found floating around in the bayous one day dead. Holt was put on trial in Vicksburg, Mississippi for it, but they never could connect him with it. Now, somebody else that Holt met that I bet a lot of y'all did not know about said after the tragic death of his beloved master, Holt traveled for some time with a racehorse stable and later worked on the racehorse farm of Captain James Brown near Fort Worth, Texas. There he met Frank James, brother of the celebrated Jesse James, and he traveled with him for a while. Now, that was interesting, I found out. Now, this is his words, not mine, like I said. But Holt's a very, very interesting character. Like I said, my camp, the Brigadier General Humphreys Camp 1625, when Holt dies in 1936, if everybody remembers the famous historian Shelby Foote, Shelby Foote when he was a boy during the Depression time, sat on Holt Collier's porch. And he told this story many times, talk about listening to Holt talk about the war and all of his escapades. But if you want to read more about Holt Collier, I highly recommend get Minor Ferris Buchanan's book, Holt Collier, His Life, His Roosevelt Hunts, and the Origin of the Teddy Bear Hunt. Holt died, and they buried him with his old Confederate hat. But his grave went unmarked for many, many years after he died, and my camp had the honor of finally marking his grave honorably with a Confederate headstone. And that was the story of Holt. And you can go there in Greenville, Mississippi, and see his headstone to this day.
Yeah, and really quickly, just for everybody, Sammy, he is a college student. He has 2 tests tomorrow, and so he had to back out. But I do want to say, on behalf of the chat, and again, all of our viewers, Sammy, thank you for coming on, and you are welcome back at any time. If you want to become a permanent panelist, you got that rare receipt, or rare invitation rather. But definitely thank you, Sammy. Thank you, like everybody said in the chat, everything you're doing for the cause, and I cannot wait to see your continuing rise in the SCV. Really quickly, we talked about Jamie Matthews, the guy who produced the videos that are on the Make Dixie Great Again website. If you go and click on the link in the chat that we're showing now at the bottom, the state of Mississippi during our bicentennial actually went ahead and paid Jamie to make a video on Holt Collier's life. It's about 18 minutes long, but it's one of the best documentaries I've ever seen, strictly because there's somebody in there who plays Albert Sidney Johnston, and he gets whacked. Don't know who that is, but he looks very familiar to the man in the wide-brimmed hat.
I tell you what, every time he gets me to portray a character in one of his videos, I always end up getting whacked. I don't know. I guess I die real well. So I think that's the 3rd video I've done.
Well, definitely. Definitely, y'all go check that video out and everything like that. J-Bo, did you do any research this week?
I did.
Nope.
I did some. One time we were going to talk about. I was going to talk about what Patrick Claiborne in his speech about arming the slaves, and my mind's gone back and forth on this. And then I watched the Sammy video, and there's a gentleman that is shown in that video, Amos Rucker. Amos Rucker was a slave, did go to the war when his master went, and he was standing in a group of people talking when somebody fired, and one of the men in their group was killed. He picked up that man's rifle and started firing back, and he fought the rest of the war. He fought the rest of the war. He was a man with a musket in line, fighting just like every other soldier. And after the war, he was a very prized gentleman in their Confederate veteran bivouac. In fact, he was the one that called the roll, and he called the roll from memory. And now that's a feat in and all of itself. And he considered that his great honor to do it. And the one meeting that he missed, he told his son to go and tell the men that he wasn't able to be there because he wasn't feeling well, and he died that night. So he served all the way up until the very end. And you can look, you can Google the picture of Amos Rucker when he was one of the pictures that was scrolling by in the Sammy video. He's the gentleman that is kind of stooped over with the badges on, because he never missed a reunion. He never missed what we call a camp meeting. He went to all of them. And when I went back and watched the Sammy video before this episode, and I wanted to just to refresh myself on it, because like everybody else, I saw it a handful of times when it come out, but I haven't seen it now in a little while. And I thought, well, I need to go back and look at them. And I've gone back and looked at all of them. The Rich Garcia one was very touching. And then the one that we did on religion, I found that one to be very emotional, very sensitive to me. So I was thinking about the collab, and we've got an entire month. And another time, we might get into the whole Patrick Claiborne letter deal. But after watching the Sammy video and seeing Amos Rucker, that stuck with me. So I'm done.
Yeah. Well, and what I was going to say is we had an episode scheduled 2 weeks from now that was dealing with the tyrant in chief during that time, and we are going to do some Lincoln bashing. But I think honestly, we should discuss Claiborne that episode. So we may need to change it up a little bit and save the tyrant bashing for a little bit later. But we'll talk about it in our post show meeting. Adam, I asked you to do some research on a relatively until 2003 unknown gentleman within the Confederacy. Can you talk about him for a sec?
Sure. I'm sure anybody that's seen Gods and Generals knows who Jim Lewis is. But other than what we see in Gods and Generals and other popular media, there's not much known about Jim Lewis other than he served with Stonewall Jackson during the war between the states. Jim Lewis first joined General Jackson's staff in November of 1861 while the Army wintered near Winchester, Virginia. And it's not really known if Jim was free or slave, but recent historians have found evidence that Jackson paid W.C. Lewis annually for the hire of Jim. So Jim was one of 7 slaves owned by W.C. Lewis. The Lewis family lived in Lexington, as did Jackson. So you can naturally assume Jackson knew Jim Lewis prior to the war, especially considering Stonewall Jackson's involvement with the colored Sunday school that he founded and supervised. So both Stonewall Jackson and his staff recognized the value of Jim Lewis and how dedicated he was to his work. One Jackson staffer made a glowing comparison between Jim and Little Sorrel, Jackson's horse. Now, sometimes I don't think it would be very nice to be compared to a horse, but the way that this comparison was written, I think it was a very glowing explanation about how dedicated he was to his work. It said both the horse and Jim Lewis were patient, easygoing, and reliable. Both man and horse seemed to understand their master thoroughly and rarely failed to come up full to all of his requirements. Another staff member called him faithful, brave, big-hearted Jim. Jim Lewis was said to have known what Stonewall Jackson before the general could even ask for it. He became familiar with General Jackson's odd habits, his odd behaviors, and his temperament. And if you've ever studied Stonewall Jackson, you know he was, of course, a brilliant tactician, a great general, but he could be a bit odd. And Jim Lewis was able to get used to him, and it just goes to show how close they were with each other, because everyone says that Stonewall Jackson had that public persona that could be a bit aloft, a bit distant, but those that were his close friends, close friends and family, he had a different side. He could try to make jokes. He wasn't very good at making jokes, but he could, and he had a lighter side, side that not many people saw. And I think Jim Lewis probably saw that lighter side of Stonewall Jackson in all the years that they served together. When Stonewall Jackson was wounded at Chancellorsville, Jim Lewis helped care for the general. Jim was also one of the few people allowed in Jackson's sick room at any time. When Stonewall Jackson, Jim Lewis led Jackson's horse in the funeral procession and was known to have been completely distraught with grief. Even General Jackson's wife writes about how she was so touched that Jim was so overcome with grief at the passing of Thomas Jackson. After Stonewall Jackson's death, Jim served with Sandy Pendleton, and then Pendleton died in 1864, and Jim returned to Lexington. And there, we really don't know what happened to Jim Lewis. Little is known about him other than his involvement with Stonewall Jackson and Sandy Pendleton. He died in Lexington shortly after the war, and unfortunately, the location of his grave is unknown today. There was never a marker placed on his grave. So that kind of led Connor and I to talk before the show tonight that maybe we need to start a collection or a project to go and mark the grave of Jim Lewis. So that's what I was able to come up with. Again, there's not much.
Yeah, well, the one thing that I found interesting, looking at his finder grave when I was researching, I'm gonna put you down here in a second, but this is a famous, I believe it's a post-war lithograph of General Jackson holding a prayer service at his headquarters, and of course there's Jackson there in the center. But if you look immediately to his right-hand side, which is a place of honor in all decorum, there's Jim Lewis right there. Clearly, marked out. Just Google that. But definitely, if you're a member of the Stonewall Jackson camp or the Stonewall Brigade in Richmond, reach out to us, because that's something that
No, looks like he's gone again. But yeah, the Stonewall Jackson Brigade, or the Stonewall Brigade in Lexington, is very active. So I'd like to work with them any way we can to put some sort of marker on Jim Lewis's grave. He deserves it. I'd be glad to chip in the first few bucks to get it done.
Yeah. Can y'all hear me now?
Yeah.
I'll throw
Can
in
I be
with
heard?
you. I'll throw
Y'all can hear me?
a few bucks in to do that. Yeah, we need to. That needs to happen. I'll throw some money in on that.
Well, can y'all? I think Larry gave me a thumbs up for the hearing. Y'all can hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we know the cemetery where he was originally buried. According to Find a Grave, they disinterred everybody and moved them to another spot. So really, what we really need help with is people helping us find through the records of where his headstone is and things of that nature. But it's definitely somebody who deserves. All Confederate soldiers deserve to be marked. We can get into that in another opinion episode, but that'd be something great for us to do with it. I did research on another Mississippian. I didn't know this episode would be completely Mississippi heavy, especially with Sammy's ancestor. Kind of figured it with Larry and Holt. But in Mississippi, in the 1890s, the year House of Representatives year, there was a representative from Washington County, whose name was John F. Harris. And that's who I did research on, and trying to find information on John F. Harris was kind of iffy. I found a couple of articles written about him post 1890, and his obituary. But John F. Harris was born in Virginia originally, and born into slavery. But I'll just let I'll fast forward years for John and let his own words speak for themselves. But after Reconstruction, he was elected as a representative into the Mississippi legislature. And while serving in February, and some accounts that I read said even on February 1st, 1890 is when he gave the speech I'm about to. A proposal for the Mississippi legislature was put forward about paying, I believe it was $10,000 for a Confederate monument to Mississippi's Confederate dead. And a white representative got up on, I guess, January 31st, thereabouts, and he was opposed to the bill and gave his opposition. And the article that I'm quoting from says this. Then John F. Harris, a black Republican delegate from Washington County, rose to speak. And he says, quote, "Mr. Speaker, I have risen in my place to offer a few words on the bill. I have come from a sick bed. Perhaps it was not prudent for me to come, but, sir, I could not rest quietly in my room without contributing a few remarks of my own. I was sorry to hear the speech of the young gentleman from Marshall County. I'm sorry that any son of a soldier would go on record as opposed to the erection of a monument in honor of the brave dead. And, sir, I am convinced that had he seen what I saw at Seven Pines and in the 7 days fighting around Richmond, the battlefield covered with the mangled forms of those who fought for this country and their country's honor, he would not have made the speech. When the news came that the South had been invaded, those men went forth to fight for what they believed, and they made no request for monuments, but they died, and their virtues should be remembered. Sir, I went with them. I too wore the gray, the same color as my master. They stayed for 4 long years, and if that war had gone on until now, I would have been there yet. It was an honor. I want to honor those brave men who died for their convictions." I'm going to pause right there. This is during what the left wing academics are claiming is when Confederate monuments were raised, that Jim Crow era, quote unquote. But here's a black representative getting up saying that he was proud to be a Confederate soldier, and if the war was still going on some 30 years later, he would still be fighting it. But going back to what he said,
Well, give me that.
he goes on to say that when my mother died, I was a boy who, sir, then acted part of the mother to the orphan slave boy, but my old missus, were she living now or could speak to me from those high realms where are gathered the sainted dead, she would tell me to vote for this bill, and, sir, I shall vote for it. I want to know, and I want all the world to know that my vote is given in favor of the bill to erect a monument in honor of the Confederate dead. And that's really, really important. Here's a black Confederate soldier in the time period that everybody is saying, when these monuments were raised, they were raised out of hate, saying that he wants to raise a monument to remember his fallen comrades. You cannot get any, as far as historically looking at firsthand accounts, that completely debunks the entire left's myth about everything. Now, I haven't done research on this next claim because that's where the quote ends, but the person who wrote the article claims that Harris stirred up enough support that every black representative voted in favor as well. I'm not sure about that. I can't prove it or disprove it, but that's my next little bit I'm going to be trying to research to see if that really happened or not. So that's it, but that's you can't argue with the man's words. Yeah, and I see where Roger Lee Hattenbaugh is saying their editorials claiming the whole story is false. In the Greenville newspaper, which if you look up John F. Harris and go to his Find a Grave, you'll find a couple of amazing things. One, you'll see that he doesn't have a headstone. Rather, the state of Mississippi's Confederate Dead Monument is serving as his headstone. But next, you'll see his obituary, but you'll see an editorial that was printed in the newspaper and around 1900, I believe, where it talks about him and giving that speech. So that's it. But anyway, we have been working. We're at an hour and a half. Covered well. Like I said, we'll talk post chat about future episodes for sure. Next week, though, we are going to talk about, because we are approaching the 160th of the anniversary of the war, or we're in the 160th and the anniversary of the war. We're going to talk about President Davis and the inauguration. Like I said, we'll have a member from the Beauvoir staff on to talk about the event going on at the end of the month for the Oddfellows. And, I think that's it. Thank you again, Sammy, for coming on. Thank you, everybody, for watching and participating in the chat. Remember everything we mentioned at the beginning of the episode as far as the fundraisers and important dates and things like that. I can't think of anything else to say. So without further ado, we'll see y'all next week. And remember, like Harold Philpott says, no Fumar in the elevator.
No Fumar in the elevator.
Kumar.